How do you feel about reincarnation? For a lot of people, they were raised with the idea, and so it's not a big deal. For others, it's very foreign to the way we were raised. But I've got some interesting stories to share with you about reincarnation, doing past life regressions as a hypnotist. Stay tuned. When I first started working as a hypnotist, I did the usual things like helping people lose weight, quit smoking, sleep better, deal with phobias, etc. But the real fun for me and my real focus in following the career path of being a hypnotist lies in the idea of doing past life regressions. When I first learned about past life regressions and hypnosis and how you could use hypnosis to find out what you were or where you were or who you were in a previous lifetime, I was fascinated with it. So I want to share some stories with you today about past life regressions. I've got two that I want to share. These are from clients that I've had. The first one I want to tell you about is was from a young woman. She was probably 25, 30, and she had a little boy that was 2 years old. And she had realized that as he got older, she was becoming increasingly more upset and anxiety ridden whenever he would get very far away from her. Like if they went to a playground or something and he'd want to, wander off and play on the playground equipment, she would have a full-on panic attack if he wasn't right next to her. Well, she realized that this was not healthy, this was not normal, wasn't good for her, and it certainly wasn't good for him. She wanted to have another child, and she knew that until she resolved this issue, that she was in no position to bring another child into this world. So she wanted to figure out what was going on. She followed the traditional paths of self-help. She went to therapy. I believe she tried medication, and it didn't really help her so much. And she had the wherewithal to think that maybe, just maybe, this fear was something that she had brought with her into this lifetime, that this was unresolved fear. And that is often the case with reincarnation. We come into this lifetime with unresolved issues, fears, concerns, personality traits, things that we need to address in this lifetime. Anyway, so she came to me, told me her situation, and I said, well, I don't know what'll happen. And I never do when I do past life regressions with people, but it's always worth a shot to see what happens. We did the typical hypnotic induction, got her into a nice state, and I'll share with you her experience. What she found was that she found herself in a little cabin in the woods, and she instinctively knew this was back in like the 1700s. She was in northern Canada, and winter was fast approaching. She was a young woman, happily married to a Canadian fur trader, and she just instinctively knew that he was a Canadian fur trader. They lived in this little cabin in the woods, and they had a baby. They had a beautiful little newborn baby. Well, in her vision, she experienced her husband going out to go hunting, like he often did, only she waited for him to come back. And it was days and it was weeks, and he never came back. And during this time, it was snowing because she's very far north. So it snows early and it snows deep. And it snowed and it snowed, and her husband never came back. She was unable to open her door and leave the cabin. And I don't know where she would go if she could leave. But there was so much snow that she was snowed in. Her husband was gone. And it didn't take long until she ran out of food in her cabin. All of her food was gone. And so, of course, she no longer was producing breast milk to feed the baby that she was taking care of. And in this experience that she had, her newborn little baby died in her arms from starvation. And while she was recounting this to me during the past life regression, she was incredibly emotional, absolutely just heartbroken. And it was pretty hard for me to watch her go through this at the same time. So she was telling me the story, the baby died. And of course, it didn't take long until she too passed from starvation because there was no food. So I brought her back up out of the regression, and we talked for a bit, we debriefed. And what she realized on her own was that it was this trauma of losing this baby that she wanted to resolve, and that she now was able to validate for herself that the death of this infant was not her fault. It was not something she could have prevented. It simply was an experience that she had. And that was incredibly healing for her to realize now that she wasn't responsible for the death of that child, allowed her to live her life now free from the anxiety attacks and the panic attacks. And what she noticed, and she told me this in a later email, is that she was able now to take her little boy to the park. He could wander off, play on the play structures, interact with other children, and she did not have any degree of panic attack whatsoever. And that was her validation that she had, in fact, resolved this issue that she brought with her into this lifetime. And through her emails, not only did she let me know that her panic attacks had subsided, but that she was, in fact, expecting her second child. And she was feeling very, very good about her ability to raise children and to be free from these unresolved issues. Now, I'm going to tell you another one in a second, but before I do that, I would like to ask you, if you're interested in this subject, to subscribe to my channel. YouTube likes those subscriptions and those likes, those thumbs up. And the more I get, then the more people that are offered the opportunity to look at this video. So I would appreciate that if you would do that. I also want to invite you to a monthly past life regression webinar that I do. They're group experiences, they're on Zoom, and they're free. So I'll put this item information in the link below, and you do have to register for it, but we meet on the first Tuesday of every month. And, I give a little bit of instruction on what to do and how to approach this. And then I put everybody into a state of hypnosis, and we do past life regressions. Sometimes people have very interesting experiences, and sometimes nothing at all. And that's okay. That's the way of past life regressions. You are invited to join me. Again, links and more information are below. Let's move on to story number 2. This is one that I thought was very interesting. It was a young woman, again, that I had worked with since she was a teenager in high school. I think the first time I worked with her was for sports performance and confidence and all of that. And she contacted me later in her early 20s. She was a married woman by then. She was married, living on the other side of the country. She had a little baby, and she was very happy. Her life was wonderful. But she still had this weird sense of anxiety whenever she was out in public. She always had this creepy feeling that she was being watched, or that she was in trouble, not in trouble for doing something, but that she was in danger. There was just something creepy about that. And, it wasn't horrifying to the point where she was a recluse and locked herself in her house every day, but it was bad enough that she was ready to do something about it. And we had actually done some regular kind of hypnosis sessions on anxiety and things like that before, and they helped a little bit, but they didn't really resolve this issue. And I had mentioned to her that perhaps it was an unresolved issue from a previous lifetime, and that she should consider that idea, and if it felt right, if she resonated with that possibility, to get a hold of me and we could do a past life regression. So that's what she did. It was a while later, a few years later, she got a hold of me and she said, "You know what? This is still going on. I'm ready to deal with it." We did the typical induction, get her into the state of hypnosis. Then I do my past life regression thing, a little different than usual hypnosis. And what she experienced was that she found herself living the life of a gypsy, and she was in a gypsy camp. And she was a young, beautiful woman, very young, actually. And she had been married off to this older man who was kind of the leader of the band. He was a big deal. And so he got away with a lot of things that maybe other people wouldn't have gotten away with. I'm not sure about that, how that hierarchy works. But she was married to him, and she was not happy about it. She didn't want to be married to him. So in her vision, in her experience through this past life regression, she found that she would oftentimes wander away. She would go to other other camps and she would try to interact with other people, but she would notice that there were always people watching her, that her husband had, in fact, sent several people to follow her everywhere she went to keep an eye on her. I guess he suspected that she wasn't all that happy and that she might be ready to bolt or run away at any time. And so he had people follow her everywhere she went, and she would turn and she would see them out of the corner of her eye, and they would duck behind a building or a tree or something. And they never confronted her. They never, her husband never confronted her about it, but she always knew that she was being watched, she was being followed, and because of that, she was trapped in this marriage that she was very, very unhappy about. Isn't that an interesting experience? She never did escape this husband, but in this lifetime, once I brought her back up into normal waking consciousness, and we talked about it in kind of looked at what was happening. What she realized, and I always prefer to have the client come to the realization on their own, not me telling them what I think happened. What she realized is that this is obviously, probably obvious to you, that this is why she's always felt watched. This is why she's always felt like somebody was following her, because she had not resolved that unhappiness in that past life. I asked her if that energy signature was anybody she recognized in this lifetime, and it was not. So it was not like it was her current husband or her dad or brother or friend or anybody that she knew. But it was very helpful for her to understand why this had been happening for pretty much her entire adult life. Why she always had that sense that someone's watching, someone's following, when that just gives you the creeps. Well, when she realized where that came from, it made sense, and it no longer was a part of her life experience here in this waking consciousness. I think it's interesting to do past life regressions just to see if there are things going on in our lives that can be explained from energy that we bring with us into this lifetime. I would like to invite you again to join me on the first Tuesday of every month. You go to register for that, so find the links below, get registered. And if you want to do a past life regression, bring with you an idea, an intention to perhaps answer a question, perhaps gather information about something to help make sense of it, or just to explore to see what is there for you. And that's how I've always done it. I've always just gone into the past life regression to see what I can see. And sometimes it's fascinating and I can connect it to other things going on in my life. And other times it doesn't make a darn bit of sense at all, but that's what I experienced. So maybe someday it will. It's fun. It's exciting. And, but you got nothing to lose. Give it a shot. Let me know if you have questions about how this works. Register below, and I hope to see you on the first Tuesday of the month, on any month, for a past life regression group experience.